everybody. Welcome back to the 60s and 70s True Story series. Today, we're going to talk about the Manson murders. Now, everyone knows the name Manson. The tragedy that follows it will never be forgotten. Today, we're looking at the true story behind the Manson murders. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Ashley, and I'm a lover of all things 60s and 70s, the fashion, the movies, the TV shows, the music, and everything in between, just not the values. So if that's something you're into, definitely hit subscribe and stay tuned. Now, today we are going to talk about the Manson murders. So let's get into this insane story. It's surrounded by tragedy and horrific acts of violence that left the world shook. We are first going to talk about the family itself, how it formed, and a little bit behind the philosophy of Charles Manson into his crazy mind. We're also going to talk about the murders themselves and the aftermath. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the family. Now, Charles Manson grew up in the prison system, starting young and going in and out of prison throughout his teens. By 1958, he was released and on parole from Terminal Island, California at the age of 23, following his 1956 conviction for car theft. He was in and out after that, and then in 1967, settling in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco during the Summer of Love. He met his first follower, Mary Bruner, in April 1967 and quickly attracted a group primarily of young women before moving them to Los Angeles in late 1967. He then recruited Lynette Squeaky Fromm, Patricia Kramwinkle, and Susan Atkins within the first 3 months. He ultimately cultivated a guru image, using his musical aspirations, drug use, and the counterculture appeal to attract followers in San Francisco. The group moved to Los Angeles eventually, settling in at Spahn Ranch in August of 1968, where he continued to grow his following, the family, to roughly 20 to 30 core members. Before moving to the ranch, a period in early 1968, they lived in Topanga Canyon and at Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys' home. Dennis very much was into the hippie scene and invited the family to live with him. He even let Charlie meet producers so he could get his music heard. One such producer, Terry Melcher, heard Manson's music and ultimately ended up rejecting it, fueling theories that Manson targeted Melcher's former home at 150 Cielo Drive for the 1969 murders. The group became firmly established at the Spahn Ranch as their main headquarters through the summer and fall of 1968, and they remained there until the fall of 1969. Now, they did live rent-free with the 80-year-old blind owner, George Spahn, in exchange for labor, so they clearly took advantage of this old blind man. Cult members maintained the property, cared for horses, and operated a riding business. Now, while on the ranch, Manson began preaching and, of course, brainwashing his followers. He talked about the apocalypse and racist philosophy known as Helter Skelter, or as so he named it, Helter Skelter, predicting a race war where his family would rule after. He blended Beatles lyrics, New Testament revelations, Scientology-influenced psychological manipulation, and of course, drug-induced hallucinations to gain control over the followers. Manson ultimately aimed to convince his followers that he was a divine figure, to instruct them to commit the murders in 1969 to trigger his helter-skelter vision. Now, clearly at this point, the followers, the family, was significantly brainwashed. When Charlie said jump, they would jump. And this ultimately leads to the murders. Now, let's talk about the murders. Now, on the night of August 8th, 9th, 1969, Manson directed his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Kramwinkle, to the Benedict Canyon home of Roman Polanski. Now, he did not know at the time that it was Roman Polanski's house. It was kind of like he doing research. It said that he chose this house because it was Terry Melcher's house. Terry Melcher rejected his music. He had a little bit of an ego and he, had a certain feeling about Terry Melcher. He was not happy with him. And so that is why he went to this location. He had no idea Roman Polanski had moved in with his pregnant wife, Sharon Tate. No idea. So it was kind of random in a way. Now, he and the followers thought it was Terry Melcher's house. So they were going in and taking care of business. But the followers were under the impression of, okay, this is what's going to help us become like the top people. Like, this is going to start that war. We're going to be on top. We're going to go hide in a canyon after, and we're going to come out on top. And so Manson told his followers basically, now is the time for Helter Skelter. And so they went in, guns ablazing. Now, the victims, Sharon Tate, she was an actress, a model, a style icon, and she was also 8.5 months pregnant. Also, another victim was celebrity hairstylist, friend, and also former husband of Sharon. A little weird, right? Jay Sebring. And a friend, Coffee Harris, Abigail Folger. Another friend, writer, Fred Kosky, and Stephen Parent. He was actually a friend of the caretaker, was there by accident, and wrong place, wrong time. The group, Sharon's group, had returned home from eating out, and they were just going to enjoy a nice, relaxing evening in. Little did they know what would happen. Now, Roman Polanski was not home at the time. He was away filming, and was due home in about a week, to see his pregnant wife. So he was out of the country when this happened. And Sharon Tate, is a style icon. She's an icon of the 1960s. She was a rising star in film. And it was just an extremely terrible and tragic, violent end that she had, and that she had to endure. And it was just really sad that her life ended so young, and also the life of her unborn child. And she is forever one of my favorite style icons of the 60s. Now, with the murders themselves, when the group of the family went to the house, Linda Kasabian was like the getaway car. She actually stayed at the car. So she was not involved in the actual physical murders. And there's a lot of, talk about that. Like, people are like, well, she was a part of it. She was brainwashed just like the rest of them, but she didn't physically partake in the murders. Now, Tex, Susan, and Patricia, they were involved, physically involved. And they physically committed the murders inside the house. Linda Kasabian, again, was the lookout. And she later actually would be the one to convict them in court and tell of the horrific night. And she was offered a plea deal for that. Now, the victims, when the family came in, they first shot Stephen Parent, who was at the gate. Wrong place, wrong time. Okay, Tech shot him like point blank. They went into the house. They did cut the wires so nobody could call anyone. And they shot and brutally stabbed a total of 102 times, these people. Now, Tate was stabbed 16 times, and her blood was actually used to write the word pig on the front door. And there are pictures of this. And again, they were trying to start that race war. So that's why they did that. And they had no remorse in these killings. They clearly were just like on drugs under this like spell of Charlie Manson, and they were brutal. Like, they were just like, there's even, articles about how I believe it's Patricia or Susan, that they just kept stabbing and they like felt bone and they just kept going. Like, they were in a zone that was like not right, clearly. And Abigail did try to escape. Like, two of them were found out on the lawn, like trying to escape, but stabbed to death. Sharon and Jay were found in the living room. And it was said that, Sharon like pleaded, like, at least let my baby live. Like, she was just like trying her best to survive this ordeal. And unfortunately, neither her or her child did. And they didn't care. They didn't care. They were just brutal in these murders. And you know, it was by chance they got caught, with these murders. And we'll get into that later. It's crazy how they got caught, honestly. They were arrested, but not for the murders. It was something totally different. And like I said, we'll get to that later. Now, the murders didn't stop here because the following night, they continued this helter-skelter plan. Like this wasn't enough for them. And first of all, weren't they like nervous that they were going to be found out? Like, weren't they like, oh man, we just like murdered a bunch of people. This is like big news. We probably should lay low. No, no, they weren't. They were like, let's keep this party going, which is like crazy. And this led to the La Bianca murders. And this was on August 9th, 10th of 1969. And the following night, they literally went to a random house. This was very random. Um, and they, sought more victims for this helter-skelter like scheme. And the victims were supermarket executive Lino LaBianca and his wife Rosemary. They had come home from a night out to dinner, and it quickly turned for the worse. Now, the location was their home in Los Feliz section of Los Angeles. The Manson family entered the home, selected victims randomly. So Manson went into the home first. He tied the couple up and then instructed his followers to kill them. Lino was stabbed 12 times with a bayonet and had the word war carved into his stomach. So, again, these are like brutal murders. Rosemary was stabbed 41 times. And again, war was done to initiate the helter skelter scheme that they had. They also left a message of death to pigs and rise. Those were written on the wall in blood. And Helter Skelter was also written on the refrigerator. Now, involved in this crime from the family were Manson himself. So he actually physically was involved in this one. He was not at all physically involved with the Sharon Tate murders. He did tell them to do it. So, yes, he was involved, but he physically wasn't there. But for this one, he was involved. He was there. He got his hands dirty. And he also involved Watson again, Atkins, Kremwinkle, and also Steve Clem Grogan. Now, the murders remained unconnected to the Tate killings by police for several weeks. And the family wasn't arrested for this at all. Like, they weren't even thought of involved in this. Los Angeles was definitely in a panic after this happened. People were like being extra careful. The family actually got arrested for auto theft, not for the murders. And they were arrested in October of 1969 at Barker Ranch. Now, this is crazy because they weren't even suspected. Now, where they got themselves in trouble, and it was one of their own, was the family was in jail. Susan Atkins in jail bragged to her cellmate. She bragged about this. She was real proud of it. That the family was the one who committed the murders. Like, she was like, yeah, we did that. That was us. Like, that's how far gone these family members were from like reality at this point. And her confession of the killings of actress Sharon Tate and detailing the death list was a crucial breakthrough for this case. It broke it open, and then it led to the arrest of the Manson family and everyone involved. Now, once these family members were arrested, it became a circus on trial, with Charlie ranting and raving, him chanting, and the girls following along in court. The girls literally were still under his spell, even in jail. Even though he wasn't in control of them in jail, they were still like followers of him. And so whatever Charlie did, they did. For instance, when Charlie carved an X in his forehead, the girls followed suit, symbolizing they had been X'd out of society. When Charlie shaved his head, the girls shaved their head. And so did his followers that were outside the courthouse. Squeaky was one of his devout followers that sat with the family outside day and night of the courthouse. Now, the highly publicized proceedings featured, like I said, bizarre behavior, disruptions, and ended in a death sentence. Later, those were commuted to life imprisonment when California abolished the death penalty, which they should have just maybe like were a little lax on that and just cut them off because what they did was extremely wrong. But that's just my opinion. The sentences were commuted to life in prison, which I don't even think they deserved that. After California's 1972 abolishment of the death penalty. Now, Charles Manson, he died in prison. He had natural causes in 2017. While he was in prison, he remained the same old Charlie, spinning stories, being a little out there with his stories. He was interviewed numerous times on programs, and he never really gave solid answers. He was like a man of many riddles, and he was just a very interesting character for sure. And I don't think we'll ever understand that, the mind of Charles Manson at all. I don't think we want to. Susan Atkins died of brain cancer in prison in 2019. Now, Leslie, she was the only one that has been released from prison. And she went to a halfway house in July of 2023 after serving over 50 years. And this was very controversial that she did get released. Um, I mean, yes, I do believe people change, but I think her involvement in what she did, I just don't think she should have been released, to be honest. It's almost like a slap in the face to the victims, you know? And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And lastly, Charles Tex Watson was tried separately and also sentenced to death, but later on, life in prison. Deborah Tate, sister of Sharon Tate, is a victim's right advocate who has attended every parole hearing and of all the Manson members and opposes their release. Now, despite her efforts, Leslie was released in 2023, and Deborah has described the release as a ethically and morally wrong situation. And she's maintaining that her sister's murderers should never walk free. And I agree with her. Like the way that she was killed, especially because she was pregnant, like yeah, it doesn't sit right with me, and I don't think it sits right with anyone. And I know, again, people can change, and you know, the girls were brainwashed and they probably were on drugs, and all these things play into that. But to physically do something like that, I just think you don't deserve to be free. You just don't. And it is a very much slap in the face to those victims that were taken by the Manson family. And Deborah Tate continues, you know, her work in advocacy for victims' rights. And I commend her for that. And just it shows how much she truly loved her sister and um, wants justice to be served. And the Manson family, they left a mark on the 60s. And again, it was the end of the 60s. It was end of the summer of love. And that really kind of stopped that in its tracks. And I think it is a very like just it's an interesting story because how can people be so under the spell of someone that they do such horrible things? And it's just it's crazy. It's like so mind altering that someone can be so deep in something like that that they will do things that they never thought they would do, you know? And there's been so many movies about this, there's been so many books. Um, there's also been, you know, movies that like do an alternative version, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And you know, oh, do I wish that that was actually like the true version of what happened? And I think everyone does, but it's not. It ended extremely tragic and it shook a whole nation when it happened. And it was something that was very much a big part of the 60s and going into that transition of the 70s. Now, yes, the Manson family left their mark, but they left a horrific one. A thought that people can be evil, can be that violent to one another. It destroyed the summer of love idea and made America aware that the real monsters are not just in the movies, but can be people. And that is kind of a quick overview of the true story of the Manson family. Now, I know I could probably talk hours and hours on this topic because number one, I've been down the rabbit holes a lot. And I've watched many documentaries, many movies, read books. There's so much in this, but I kind of just wanted to do a brief overview that number one kind of told the story in a short and sweet way, but also wasn't too graphic in respect of the victims of the tragedy that was the Tate LaBianca murders. Now, if you like this and true stories of the 60s and 70s, there's other true stories on my channel that you can check out. Hit the subscribe button. Also, share and like if you know a friend that would like this content. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.